All right, so if we look at our gameplay sound effects lab, we can see a list of some of the sound effects we would want to use. And there's also links to a couple different websites that we'll look at for downloading sound effects. And there's some instructions here, and there's also some instructions about the code. So we'll look at that when we switch over to Godot in a bit. But we're just going to start by creating some sound effects. So I'm going to use two different websites to demonstrate this, and I'll kind of talk about what I like to use them for, but you can really use whatever you want or whatever makes sense for the type of sound effects that you're creating. You guys. So for the player, we're going to have a jump sound effect. We're going to have a land sound effect, like when they land back on the ground. We'll have a hit sound effect for when the player gets hit by an obstacle. And then we'll have a dies sound effect for when the player, dies in the level or loses the game. We'll also need an item collected sound effect. We can make a win game sound effect. We don't have a win state for our game yet, so we can make it and use it later. Another type of sound effect we might want is like a portal or a checkpoint. And any other aspect of your game, you might have different sound effects for when you get hit by well, in my game I have a cactus and now I have like a bug, so you could have different sound effects for different enemy attacks. So the first website that we're going to look at is called JFXer. And this is a web version of a popular program that was originally created for Windows, which is a sound synthesis program. So you're actually creating new sounds rather than downloading recorded sounds. And this is actually specifically designed to be used with video games. So you can see up here on the left, there's a menu, and you can open a sound, save a sound, duplicate a sound, get a link, or export a sound. We'll probably just use the export button. And then it has these default sounds. So the default is just like a default sine wave. There's also a random button. Sorry, it's a little too loud. Turn it down on here a little bit. So anytime I click this, it just creates a new random sound. Maybe still a little too loud. I guess it depends on the frequency of the sound. Then there's a pickup or coin sound. And the nice thing about this is each time we click it, we get a different variety or a different variation of this type of sound. There's a laser or shoot. There's an explosion sound. There's a power-up sound. There's a hit or hurt sound. Jump. And blip or select. This is good for like UI stuff. And the cool thing that these sounds have is there's also a mutate button. So if you like, let's say we're trying to find a jump sound, and I'm like, oh, that's nice, but I want something a little bit different. Instead of hitting the jump sound again, I can hit the mutate button, and that will just change some of the parameters, but keep the basic idea the same. So we can get some variations. And then the site also saves all the sounds that we play, so we can go back and say, oh, you know what, there's actually a really good one back here. Let's go back to that one. And then I can mutate that one. You can see there's a lot of parameters that change the sounds inside here, all these different sliders and buttons. There's obviously way too much stuff in here to go over in the class right now. But if you play around with these different effects, you'll see how it changes the sound. So a simple one is the waveform. And you can this kind of changes the quality of the sound. Each time I press on one of these buttons, it's going to play the new sound for me. So instead of clicking a button or clicking mutate, I can actually click the parameters and it'll show me how it changes. So I could choose one of those. If I change other parameters, like if I change the frequency, this will make the sound lower or higher. Each time I change a parameter, it plays the sound back so I can see what it sounds like. Oops. There's also a reset button if I want to go back to where it was. And then there's a play button up here if I just want to hear that sound again. And I can also just hit the space bar. So this is a great site for generating sounds. It has this kind of like retro 8-bit style, but there's a lot you can do with this to create different sounds. I'm going to create a few sounds here before we go to our second website. So for my character, I want to make sure to get a jump sound and a land sound, and then a hit sound and a dies sound. So let's start with jump. So I like that, but it's a little too high frequency, so let's turn it down a bit. That sounds pretty good. And so you can also use multiple sounds, but I'm just going to go with one for each for today. In the future, if you want to use a variety of sounds, we could go over how to do that with code. So I'm just going to click export here, and it's going to create a WAV file and put it in my downloads folder. So if I open up my file explorer and go to downloads, we'll see that file. Right now, I'm not streaming the my whole screen. So I'll do this, I'll download all the sounds, and then we'll go over how to do this later. So I have a jump sound that I'm happy with. Now we need a sound for when the player hits back on the ground. So I could use this same sound and maybe mutate it to get something that sounds similar but a little bit different for the land sound. That actually was pretty good for a land sound. Maybe I'll turn up the frequency just a bit. Okay, that's pretty good. So I'll export this. And so now I just have to remember that my second jump sound that I downloaded is what I want to use for my land sound. Okay, so now let's get something for if the player gets hit. So we can use the hit hurt. You could also use explosion here, but I think hit hurt will be better. I like that one. That's pretty good. I think maybe with a different. I like this one, I think. So I'll stick with this one for now. So this will be my hit sound. So that one is called hit hurt 15. It adds a number to it so you can distinguish between the different sounds. But we can remove that number or just add it. It doesn't really matter if we use the number in our project. So next, a dying sound. So let's choose, let's see. There's no default for dying or death or ending. So let's try random and see if we can find a good one. That one's pretty good. It kind of goes on for a little while. Let's see if we can mutate this a little bit and get a good one. But there's also an undo button if you don't like the mutation. Oh, that's a pretty good one. I like that one. I'm going to go ahead and download this and then try a couple mutations. Okay, I think that first one is pretty good, so I'm just going to stick with that. So then we also need something if we hit the obstacle. So this is like if I jump on the obstacle's head and it dies. So let's get like maybe a laser sound for that. That one's pretty good. I'll just use that. And so I'm going to use it for something different than what the default parameter says, but that's okay. I can kind of mix and match. So then there's an item collected sound that I need to get. So let's try using a pickup/coin default. I kind of like this one. So let's go with that one. I'm going to export that. And then we need something if we win the game. So maybe a power-up sound would be good for that. That one's pretty good. Try mutating this. I like this one. Oops. Oh, whoops, I accidentally clicked on the GitHub link. Okay, that's pretty good. I'll use this for my win sound. I can't actually put this in the game quite yet, so I may come back and do something else later. But let's go ahead and export that. Then we need like a portal or a checkpoint sound. This could also just be like if we start a new level, we would play this sound. So we could do something like blip or select for this. These are not exactly the right sounds. Let's see if let's try another power up. That one's kind of cool. See if we redo that. Kind of like that. Okay, that'll be good enough. So let's export this one. So I've got a bunch of different sounds. It's never bad to have more sounds than you need. So I'm not sure that I'll use all of those, but at least we have them to add in later. And we can always come back here and create more sounds if we need to. So the other website that I want to show real quick before we go over to Godot is Freesound. Freesound is another website where you can get Creative Commons licensed sounds. So we looked at Free Music Archive and Open Game Art on Tuesday. And Freesound is not specific to games, but it's another place where you can get a lot of good sounds. And these are usually sounds that are recorded from like an original real source by hobbyist recorders. So everything that you can download on here is free. They'll usually have like different Creative Commons licenses, so we'll probably have to give attribution. And you also have to have an account to download. So you already have an account? Oh, nice. Great. So yeah, you do have to have an account. It doesn't cost money and it's easy to sign up. So hopefully I remember my password. Whoops. Okay, there we go. Okay, so here we need to like search for a sound that we want to use. I have this like apple in my game, so I'm gonna look for an apple sound and just use that for when I get the apple. So we can listen to some different recordings on the search page. These are a little bit quieter, so I'm gonna turn the volume up again. Having a hard time finding a good short one. Okay, that's a good one, but it's too long. So let's get this one and then we can edit it. I'll just do a quick editing demo. Okay, so we can look at this sound. I'm just gonna go ahead and click download. The sounds that you get from this website usually have very long names because they have like a number at the beginning and then the name of the author and stuff. Let's take a look at the license. So this is a Creative Commons 0 license. So that means we don't have to give attribution or do anything. But I still like to keep a link to this. So I'm going to copy this link. So if I ever want to find it again, if I lose the file, I can come back to it. So I'm just going to copy that link and I'll put that in my notes. And now I think I have enough sounds to move over to Godot and start putting them over in there. So on the stream, I'm going to switch over to full screen. So the audio is not going to come through, but just, you can trust that the audio is playing. So I'm going to switch over to a full screen. And so now let's put our sound files into Godot, and we also need to make some changes to our code to make those sound files work. So the first thing I want to do is make sure to save this URL. So I'm going to copy that URL and close these files. Here's all my sound files in my downloads folder that I just created or downloaded. So then I'm going to go to my game project file folder and go to game and go into audio. And here's where I added these notes. So I'm going to open this up and just edit this real quick. So Apple sound, and then I'll paste this in here. And let's save this. So most of these sound files I can just dump into my audio folder. So I have my Godot audio folder over here, and I have my downloads folder over here. I do want to remember what I was using them for. So this jump file is just a regular jump. So I'll just throw that in there. And it has this number at the end. You don't have to rename it, but if you want to do that, you can. So that's my jump. The second jump that I downloaded, I wanted to use as a landing sound, so I'll just put land. Then this is for when the player gets hurt. So let's put this over here and rename this player hurt or hit, either one. This one, I kind of forget what this one is. Let's listen to it. Okay, that's the death sound. So let's rename this one death. And then I think this is when we hit the enemy. So let's rename this one obstacle hit. And then here is where we get an item. So let's rename this item collect. And again, the names don't really matter, but it just makes it easier to find where they are. I think this first power up is when I win the game, I think. Win game. And then I think the second one is the beginning of a level. So let's call this level start. Again, the names don't really matter here because we're going to put these into sound players. So once we put it in the sound player, it'll play whatever we want it to, but it's good to have the name in there so you remember what they're for. So then the last one is my Apple file, and this one is a little bit too long. So if you do have a sound that you want to use, but it's too long or you just want a part of it, it's relatively easy to just edit it in Audacity and then export a new version of the file. So if you have Audacity, hopefully I have Audacity on here. You can just go ahead and open it. You can download it for free. If you've taken MMP 100, you've probably used it before. But I'm just going to open it up here, and I'll put a link to it in the video as well if you need to download it. So I'm just going to dump my Apple file in here, and let's just listen to how much we want of the file. Okay, so we just need the very beginning. So I'm just going to select everything from here to the end, and I'm just going to hit delete. And then let's zoom in a little bit on this. Let's get rid of this bit at the beginning. And then one thing I want to make sure to do when I'm using a recorded file is to not have like little bit of sound at the end that suddenly gets cut, because it results in popping sounds on the computer. So I just want to select like the end of this file, however much is there, and I can just go to generate let's go to effect and fade out. Did that work? Let's try that again. Fade out. Okay, it doesn't seem like it did anything. Let's try it again. Effect, fade out. There we go. Okay. It's very small, but you could see the tail just went down a little bit. Okay, now we can see there's like a fade there. And just to be careful, let's put a tiny little fade in at the beginning. Okay, so that looks good. So now I have a short version of the file that I can use for a sound effect. And so now I want to export a file. So I can't use this directly. I have to export it as a sound file. So I'll go to export, and I can do wave here, and then I'll just find my project. So I'll go to the desktop, go to my game, go to audio, and this has a really long name, so I'm just going to call this apple.wave, and click save. Okay, and then I can just get out of here. You can save an audio file, like an Audacity file that you can edit later, but it's a pretty simple edit, so I don't think that I'll need to do that. So let's just get rid of this. And so I'm just going to say no. And so now there's my Apple file, and I can just delete this original file. And of course, I have the link in my notes, so if I ever need to get it back, I can go to my notes and get that link. So now I've got all the audio files that I need. So I'll go back to my game and open my project file and start to place these into the game. Okay. So I've got my game open. I'm going to go to scenes and then go to levels and open up level 1. This is where most of the components in my game are, so it'll be easy to find things that I want to add. So the first sound effect that I'm going to add here is just a sound to play when I enter the level, and we'll play this sound whenever I enter any level, so the the player will get used to it. So I already have a music player in here. I'm just going to duplicate this music player or audio stream player. I'm going to hit Control D, and I'm going to call this enter level. And I don't need code to play this, so I'm just going to kind of set it up to play on its own. So I'm going to go over to the inspector and reset the stream property to get rid of the file that was there. And then click empty, go to load, and go to audio. And I'm going to find my level start. I called it enter level here, level start, either one, doesn't matter that much. And then it's set to autoplay. But one thing I want to make sure is that my sound isn't going to loop. So I need to go to the audio folder and find my sound. Here's my level start sound. And then wave files, when we import them, the default is for them to, where is it? I don't see the property here. 8-bit, mono, max, trim, normalize, press. I actually don't see loop as an option, so maybe we don't have to worry about that. I guess only MP3s have a loop. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that. So let's see if that enter level sound plays. Okay, so we have that sound that'll play every time we start a new level. So next, let's add our player sounds. To do this, we're going to have to go to our player component. So I can either go into scenes and go to components and open up my player from here, or I can find my player in the scene I have open and click on the scene icon. And so that'll allow me to edit the player in the editor. So my player has a few different sounds. So I'm going to create an audio stream player and then duplicate it a few times. And we do have to be careful with the naming here. So as I mentioned, the sound file name doesn't really matter, but the stream player actually does matter because we need to make sure that it matches the code in the player's script. So if we click on the player's script, we can find references to where it plays a sound. So let's see if we can find one. So here's one, the jump sound.play. And we can see that this is using the $sign. And the $sign in the code in Godot means that it references a node that's part of the player node tree. So the player node tree is all the nodes that are connected to the player. And so if I use a $sign, just like I have $sign animated sprite, that gets a reference to this animated sprite. Here I have $sign jump sound. That means I have to name the sound node jump sound. So I'm going to hit Control K to bring this code back, to uncomment the code. And then I'm going to add in my jump sound. So I'm going to click on the player, click the plus, get an audio stream player, and I have to make sure these names match. So if these names don't match, you'll probably get an error. They don't have to be, you could change the code if you want to, but it's probably easier just to make sure it matches. So I have my jump sound. And so to add that sound, I just click on the stream, empty, go to load, audio, and then jump. And so for this one, I don't need to turn on autoplay. I don't really need to change anything here. If it's too loud, I could turn down the volume. But for now, I'll just leave it at 0 to see what that sounds like. And everything else I can leave the same. So we'll test this in a second. Let's add our other sounds. So if I scroll up just a little bit, you can see land sound.play. So I'll hit Control K to bring this code back. And then I'll just duplicate this audio stream player. So I'll hit Control D. Oh, whoops. So I have to make sure to click the node first and then hit Control D. Uh-oh. Okay, let's go to 2D. Try that again. There we go. Okay, so I have my land sound. And I'll get rid of the jump sound that was in there. Click empty, go to load, audio, and there's land. Okay, so now I also have a hit sound and a dies sound. So I'll duplicate this again. I'm going to call this hit sound. And one more time, dies sound. So for my hit sound, I just need to refresh this and just follow the same process. Go to audio and find player hurt. And then for the dies sound, just refresh, go to load, go to audio, and find death. And let's make sure that these match the code. Again, so I'm going to click on the player script and look for my other sound files in the code. Okay, so there's the dies sound. So let's uncomment that. And then it looks like I actually don't have a hit sound. So let's just code this in here. Oh, this is probably because you could have different hits from different objects. So we might not need this. Let's leave this out for now, and then we can decide later how to do this. But let's test our other sounds. We have a jump, land, and then dies. Right now, we don't have the part of the code that actually kills the player because we haven't built that part yet. But what I'll do is I'll just throw something in here. If the player falls past the bottom of the screen, I'll just call the dies function here. So I'm just adding dies in here. That's going to call this function down here. So we'll get to see that animation and hear that sound. And so let's give this a test. I'm going to go back to level 1 and see if this all lines up. So the land sound appears to work. Whoops. So the land sound and the jump sound work. When I hit the cactus, there's no sound, so we still have to add that. And if I die, then the dies sound plays. Although it looks like I don't have a dies animation, do I? Yeah, I'm getting an error here because there's no dies animation. I don't know if I just didn't make that. Maybe I didn't make that. Do I have the art for that? Let's check my sprites. I guess I never made that, so I'm not going to worry about that right now. We can add that later. Okay, so let's add sounds to our other components. So I'm going to go back to my level, and let's add the apple sound. So I'll find an apple, and then click on the edit button to edit this in its own scene. And so I just have to follow the same steps. I'm going to click on the main Apple node and just add a audio stream player. So I'll click the plus button, type in audio stream, add an audio stream player. And then let's check the code to see what this needs to be called. So I'll click on the script icon. And, oh, we wrote this script, so we can just call it whatever we want. So let's hit the plus here. Oh, we already added the audio stream. Let's name the audio stream item collected sound. And then we'll load our audio and get the item collected. And so we'll play the sound when we do the animation. So let's make a new line here, and we'll use the $ to get the item collected sound. And then we'll just say dot and play. So we'll play that sound when we collect the item. So let's go back to level 1 and test this. Oh, I put in the wrong sound. Okay, that's fine. So if I put in the wrong sound, what I can do is go back to my item and just reset the stream, and then go back to load. And what I really want is my Apple sound here. So let's see if that worked. Oops. Played the Apple scene by mistake. I need to play the level scene. There we go. Sounds pretty good. So let's get a hit sound in here. Let's start with my cactuses. So I'll find a cactus and click on the scene. And so then let's look at the script to figure out where we want to put the sound. So here we have when the body of the enemy or of the player hits the cactus. So here we can play a sound. Oh, and the cactus can't die, so we don't have to worry about that. So let's add a hit sound to the cactus. I guess we could just put this sound in the player because it's calling body.enemy collision. So let's do that instead. Let's go to the player script and find the enemy collision. Okay, so this is where this is happening. So let's play this hit sound here. So I'll say hit sound.play. And so now when we hit the cactus, it calls this enemy collision script. So that calls this function here on the player, and that plays the hit animation, and now it'll play the hit sound as well. So let's try that out. Let's go back to our level, see if that works. Whoops. Okay, so now we get a nice sound when I hit the cactus. Okay, cool. So what else do we have? We have our bugs. Let's grab our bug. So I'm going to click on the bug scene to edit that. And let's click on the bug script to take a look at what it does. So the bug script is longer like the player script. There's a lot more going on in here, but we can find our sounds. Okay, here's the dies sound if the bug dies. And then I think when the bug hits the player, it also calls the enemy collision. So we actually don't need to worry about this hit sound here, unless we want to add a separate hit sound. So if we want to do that, we can, but we'll have two sounds overlapping. So let's leave that one there, and let's just add the bug dies sound here. So I'll click on the main bug node and click plus to add an audio stream player and call this dies sound, but this is on the bug. So let's load and go to audio, and here's our obstacle hit. That's for the bug dying. So then I'm going to hit Control K to make this code uncommented, so it'll play. And so now when we play and we run into a bug, it'll play the default hit sound, but if I kill the bug, it'll play the bug hit sound. Whoops. So when the bug hits me, we get that sound. When I kill the bug, we get a different one. So these sounds are not 100% perfect. There are definitely some things I would change here. Like this sound when I kill the bug probably could sound like a little more like, you know, squishy or something. But this is a pretty good example just for this demo. Okay, so I'm just going to do a little bit of documentation, and then we'll be done with our game sound effects. So I haven't added all the sound effects that I created, but we don't have all of the components of our game quite yet. So we can add some more as we elaborate on the game. So now I want to do some documentation. I'm going to run my game, and now I'm still going to use my Xbox game bar to record my screen, but this time I'm going to make sure the audio is on. And so I'm going to hit the Windows and the G key to launch the game bar. And you can see here there's an audio section. And so let's go in here. So it has system sounds and the game sounds. So I think it should be recording. Let's see. I don't need the mic. Hopefully this will work. So I'm just going to use the record and then go back here and play the game, play the level through again. So that's everything, although I didn't get the dies sound in here, but that's good enough. So I'm going to stop this recording and close this out. So I have some documentation. So let's go to my videos and go to captures. And we have to find the one that's from today, which is this one. And let's see if the sound made it. I don't hear any sound. Uh-oh. Okay, so I'll have to debug this later. It looked like the sound was on, but it wasn't. So I'll figure out how to make sure the sound is on later. But for now, let's just go and post this on the Open Lab, and I'll post a follow-up where the sound works. So let's go to the Open Lab, and let's make a new post. And so this is background music and gameplay sound effects. This is a long one. And let's go to categories and just look for sound. So we have gameplay sound effects. We also have background music. So let's add those categories. And then we can add our documentation. So I'm just going to drag this into here. There we go. And then you can include links to the sources that you used. So since we took those notes, it's pretty easy to find. So let's go to the game folder and go to audio and find my notes. And so for this one, I'll just say the background music is Andante. Oops. I'll just copy this whole thing. Oops. Copy, paste. And then I'll put a link to this song. For some reason it won't let me select the whole thing. Okay, I guess that's a Windows thing. Let's just select the whole thing and copy and paste. And let's just do a link. We don't need to embed it. And then Apple Sound. And that came from here. I still have this open, so I'm just going to copy this link and put it in there. And then I'll just say other sounds from JFX. So that looks good. Let's preview this. Okay, everything seems to be working. And so now I'll go ahead and publish. And go to view post, and that looks good. So that's everything for the sound effects lab and posting and documenting my background music and sound effects. So I'm going to stop recording and then see if there are questions.